Қайырлы күн, құрметті қонақтар. Астана қаржы күндеріне қош келдіңіздер.
Good morning, dear guests. Welcome to our event.
Finance Days and our first panel discussion. It's actually a plenary discussion on infrastructure investment to emerging markets. Before we start, of course, I would like to extend our appreciation to our esteemed partners, Freedom Broker, Kazminerals, and ITS for their continued support and valuable contribution to the development of this forum. Without their support, we couldn't have made this. You all know that the infrastructure has been always important and actually been the backbone of economic development for any country and any region. And a lot of the emerging markets, emerging countries strive to attract long-term capital to build the infrastructure so that they can join the global trade, global economy. And the Kazakhstan, the case in focus, is not an exception. Our government is very focused on developing the infrastructure in energy, in connectivity, trade connectivity, in digital connectivity. And we all know about the struggles or difficulties in attracting capital into infrastructure. These projects are very long-term. They are not always bankable. You have to take in mind the social impact of these projects and many, many other issues. Nevertheless, we in Kazakhstan believe that this is not just a challenge, but also a great opportunity. For example, in terms of a transport connectivity, great opportunity to once again revive the Great Silk Road and be the transition hub between East and West, connecting hub between East and West. So today, this morning, for our panel session, we have distinguished guests, experts in the industry who will share their thoughts on the topic. Without further ado, let me introduce them. Mr. Kanat Bozumbayev, Deputy Prime Minister of the Republic of Kazakhstan. Mr. Nurlan Zhakupov, CEO, National Wealth Fund, Samruk, Kazyna. Mr. Hussein Ozhan, Managing Director for Central Asia and Mongolia, European Bank for Reconstruction and Development. Mr. Jad Elaun, Managing Partner and Regional Head for Middle East, Brookfield Asset Management. And Mr. Nicholas Gilauri, Managing Partner of Reformatics, 8th Prime Minister of Georgia. Of course, first of all, we would like to hear from the Deputy Prime Minister, from Mr. Bozumbayev, the country's vision, strategy for infrastructure development. Please, Mr. Bozumbayev, the floor is yours.
Thanks. Good morning, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. It is a privilege to welcome you to today's plenary session dedicated to infrastructure investment in emerging markets. It is widely recognized that well-developed infrastructure serves as a cornerstone of economic growth. Situated at the heart of Eurasia, Kazakhstan has designated infrastructure development as a central pillar of our national policy. We are actively constructing modern transport corridors, enhancing transit capacity, and attracting private investment in the energy and digital sectors. To lay the foundation for the comprehensive infrastructure framework, the government approved the National Infrastructure Plan until 2029 in July last year. The plan aims to develop essential life support systems, meet the needs of population for the foster sustainable economic growth. Among these initiatives, the Trans-Caspian International Transport Route stands out as a strategic alternative to traditional transit corridors. Over the past 5 years, this route has seen freight volumes increase sixfold, from 800,000 tons in 2020 to 4.5 million tons last year, with plans to reach 10 million tons annually. These figures reflect growing confidence in the corridor and its raising competitiveness. Kazakhstan infrastructure agenda extends well beyond the transport sector. In December of last year, the government launched the national project of the modernization of the energy and utilities sector, aimed at upgraded core systems and ensuring reliable energy supply. A key performance indicator in the reduction of infrastructure were to 40%. To modernize 86,000 kilometers of engineering grids, approximately 6.8 trillion tenge in investment is planned, significantly reducing system failures. At the same time, Kazakhstan is implementing a plan to introduce at least 26 gigawatt of new generation capacity by 2035 through the expansion of renewable energy sources, flexible gas generation, hydropower, and low-carbon-based capacity. Major renewable energy projects developed in partnership with big corporations like Total Iran, Masdar, China Power International Holdings are expected to be completed by 2029. These initiatives not only bolster regional economic capacity, but also foster job creation and enhance quality of life of our citizens. Large-scale infrastructure projects are instrumental in consolidating Kazakhstan's regional leadership. To further facilitate investment, the government has established an investment headquarters, an operator center that resolves bureaucratic obstacles in real time. We are also modernizing the regulatory frameworks of special economic and industrial zones, providing predictable tax and customs incentives and access to sites with ready-made engineering infrastructure. Investor protection has been significantly strengthened. For projects exceeding $60 million, investment agreements ensure legislative stability for up to 25 years. 6 such agreements were signed last year, and 22 more have been concluded this year. The Astana International Financial Center plays a pivotal role in attracting investment. It offers a legal framework based on English common law, a dedicated court, and an international arbitration center, providing access to debt and equity capital markets, including green and transition finance instruments. Currently, the government is advancing the Alatau city project in the Almaty region, covering more than 88,000 hectares. This initiative envisions a comprehensive ecosystem integrated business, green spaces, industrial facilities, and scientific infrastructure. The potential application of the AIFC model is being considered to enhance its investment appeal. An agro-processing and logistics hub will also be established, serving as an international export platform for the distribution of organic agricultural products. Also, our plans include the creation of international centers for knowledge, medicine, education, and tourism. This center will become key focal points for attracting business initiatives, highly qualified professionals, and creative teams generating a strong multiplier effect over the city's economy. As a result, a modern infrastructure tailored to the needs of businesses, transparent and stable conditions for the doing businesses, and government support, the Alatow city is set to establish itself as one of the leading investment and innovating hubs in Kazakhstan and Central Asia. Esteemed participants, emerging markets today stand at point of a transformative infrastructure era. Kazakhstan is prepared for offer international partners unique opportunities for collaboration across various sectors of economy. From the government side, you can expect a reliable and predictable partner. I am confident that the dialogue initiative today, within framework of Astana Finance Days, will establish a strong foundation for the long-term cooperation, innovative projects, and sustainable development. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Your Excellency, for a comprehensive overview of the government's policy in terms of infrastructure policy and some of the projects you mentioned. And of course, thanks for the warm words about the Astana International Financial Center. Dear audience, now I would like to give the floor to the CEO of Sovereign Wealth Fund, Samruk Kazyna, who manages the important portfolio of state-owned assets in the sectors like energy, energy transmission, transportation, and other. Mr. Zhakupov, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Dear ladies and gentlemen, let me thank the governor of AIFC for having this privilege to speak in front of such an esteemed audience within the framework of Astana Finance Days, such an important forum which has truly become a regional key dialogue platform for discussing not only financial but also macroeconomic issues, not only in the region, but on a broader scale. If I may, I would like to briefly introduce National Sovereign Wealth Fund, Samruk Kazyna. At the moment, as of the end of the last year, the assets under management of Samruk Kazyna amount to more than $82 billion. And our aim is to reach $100 billion asset value under our management within the near future. We are confident that we will reach this aim within foreseeable future. We have been rated by Global Institute on Sovereign Wealth Funds, top 22nd sovereign wealth fund in the world by the value of assets which are under our management. We enjoy investment grade ratings from global investment agencies in line with the sovereign. As you may have heard, recently the sovereign credit rating was upgraded to a positive outlook. So was ours. We truly believe in best corporate governance principles and are imposing those principles within Samruk Kazyna group of companies, which are based on the UK Corporate Governance Code. Our main goal is to increase the value of the assets under our management. We are fully commercially driven organization. Our portfolio companies operate in such important industries such as oil and gas, metals and mining, telcos, IT, transport and logistics, and others. 7 of our portfolio companies are publicly traded and publicly listed companies. The combined market capitalization of those companies amounts to more than $39 billion, a 74% increase since their respective IPOs. What does it mean? It means that there is a true positive investment climate here in Kazakhstan on one hand, and on the other hand, it means that Samruk Kazyna portfolio companies management are doing their best to ensure the growth of the value of the assets under their management. It's a testimony of the high quality management within the sovereign sector here in Kazakhstan. At the moment, we are focused on more than 130 investment projects for a total value exceeding $100 billion. Those projects are predominantly local critical infrastructure projects. This will drive further our valuations and our effectiveness. We possess ourselves as one of the key drivers for fostering foreign direct investments inflow into the country. We view ourselves as a foreign direct investment catalysts. Over the past 6 years, our group has successfully secured more than $27 billion in foreign investments. Because this is mainly because of the employment of a co-investment mechanism. Basically, our modus operandi is that we create a JV with a strategic partner where we take 25–30% stake, and strategic partner has 70+ stake. It runs all the operations on one hand. On the other hand, we participate with our equity, therefore we share the equity risks, and we provide the full support here on the ground. We solve whatever problems there might arise during the realization of the projects here on the ground. We enjoy full support of our government. Our Prime Minister is chairman of the board of Samruk Kazyna, and we're in constant dialogue with him. We speak to each other on a weekly basis. Basically, this mechanism has proven to be a successful one, and the testimony to that is that we have co-investment partners from such countries as the United States, China, France, Italy, Germany, Azerbaijan, Qatar, United Arab Emirates, and many others. Aligned with Kazakhstan's national vision to reduce carbon emissions by 15% by 2030 and to achieve carbon neutrality by 2060, we implement green energy projects in partnerships with global leaders, as was mentioned by His Excellency Deputy Prime Minister, such as Total Energies, Masdar, China Power International Holdings, Energy China, and others. Renewable, sustainable energy with the capacity of 5 gigawatts of $6 billion. This is our pipeline in this direction. The commissioning target is 2028. As you might have heard, we are very much focused on, as I said, we are very much focused on JVs with strategic partners. And as you might have heard, we have, on the 2nd of September, we have launched a plant which produces the equipment for windmills. We have localized it, and it has been implemented here in Kazakhstan, in Zhambyl region, in the town of Shu, together with our partner leading global renewables energy equipment company called Sunny Renewables Energy. We have launched a technical inauguration of this complex, and it will be fully up and running and fully operational by the 1st of January. So today, as of today, all the windmill projects in Kazakhstan will be equipped with locally produced equipment, state-of-the-art, most modern equipment at the best possible prices. In the oil and gas sector, we are focused on a big number of projects. The landmark projects are polyethylene. It's a $10 billion project which we execute together with our foreign partners. We are also focused on the expansion of Shymkent oil refinery together with the CNPC. Our plan is to double its capacity by 2029, by 2030 at the latest. This year, we have doubled the capacity. We have increased the capacity of our Kaspi Bitum projects by 1.5 times. This will strengthen our construction industry in terms of road building, and we are now more self-sufficient and more resilient than before. In partnership with Qatar Power International Holding, we are advancing strategic projects in the gas sphere. We are building 2 gas pipelines, the second line for Binyao-Bozoy-Shymkent and the gas pipeline from Aktobe to Kustanay. And On the other hand, we are building 2 gas processing plants, one for capacity of 1 BCMA and the other one for the capacity of 2.5 BCMA. All those projects will aim to increase the valuation of our portfolio companies on the one hand, and on the other hand, they will make Kazakh economy more resilient to external shocks and more vibrant. In the field of transport and logistics, we have a number of large-scale projects. We have invested in dry ports in Xi'an in China. We own a seaport in Lianyungan. We have upgraded a port of Kuryk, Port Aktau, and many others. We've recently launched a dry logistics hub in Almaty called Jetusu Logistics Hub. This year we will complete Dostik-Mayenty railway, which will enable us to increase our transit capacity by 2 times in comparison with 2024. So in 2026, our transit capacity will be 55 million tons of cargo. As mentioned earlier by His Excellency Deputy Prime Minister, in telco and digital infrastructure, we are implementing 5G technology and building Trans-Caspian cable route, which will again make our economy more resilient to external shocks. So basically, Samruk Kazyna's development is based on partnership between the state and global investors, national priorities and international expertise, current responsibilities and future opportunities. By aligning Kazakhstan's strategic objectives with international best practices, we aim to foster sustainable growth and long-term value creation. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Zhakupov. I think the partnership model, co-investment model of Samruk Kazyna shows that we as a country, not just proposing projects, developing projects, but we are ready to put our own tenge behind those projects and share the risk with international investors. And you've heard there are a lot of the projects being implemented, so we believe that the more projects will be offered and investors interested can come in and partner with Samruk Kazyna. Now I would like to invite to the floor a representative of the institution that is one of the largest foreign investors into Kazakhstan's economy, with a portfolio of investment over $10 billion US. Our friend, Mr. Hussein Ozhan, managing partner for Central Asia and Mongolia for EBRD. Please, Hussein, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Renat. Thank you very much. And congratulations on the Astana Finance Days. It is an important platform, as mentioned by Nurlan as well. Your Excellencies, Excellency Deputy Prime Minister, distinguished colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, it is indeed a privilege for me to be here today to discuss the evolving role of the MDBs, multilateral development banks, or international finance institutions, in unlocking infrastructure finance, particularly in the regions of strategic importance like Central Asia, like Kazakhstan. At the EBRD, European Bank for Reconstruction and Development, we believe infrastructure is not a mere concrete or steel. It is the connective tissue of economies. It's the enabler of trade and increasingly the platform for climate resilience and digital transformation. In my short remarks, I will highlight how the IFIs, like EBRD, are driving transformation through risk allocation frameworks, ESG-driven product design, and also equally, if not more importantly, the mobilization of private capital. I will also talk a little bit about potential opportunities that we are looking into, particularly in Kazakhstan. Let me set the scene by talking what it takes to mobilize private capital in an emerging market like Kazakhstan. MDBs or IFIs cannot and should not finance infrastructure alone. And this was also indicated by putting the own tenge as Nurlan, and it was indicated by Renat as well as the big important infrastructure program that was introduced by Deputy Prime Minister as well. So our mission is to unlock private sector or private capital by creating investable ecosystems as well. And all the adagio in infrastructure business, it says, risks should be borne by the parties that is best capable of basically managing those risks. So using this principle, as EBRD, we continued our policy engagement with the policymakers, with the government of Kazakhstan, particularly in the areas of project finance and PPPs as well. There are two important projects that was done. One of them is in the infrastructure sector, in the transport infrastructure. That's the big Almaty Ring Road. And the other one was financed last year, is the Kokshetau social infrastructure, Kokshetau hospital PPP project. So let me talk a little bit about the Bakat, which is the Almaty Ring Road project, PPP. This is Kazakhstan's first large-scale PPP project in transport, which was made possible through improved concession framework, PPP law, and the mechanisms that we try to support and work with the government. And the project attracted a reputable investors, international investors, while we mobilized, EBRD mobilized a financial package of close to 600 million, and 2/3 are coming from the lenders and parallel loans from commercial banks and MDBs as well. And the project was successfully delivered in 2023, 15 months ahead of schedule and on budget. This was also quite important. Energy transition is another important one, particularly in the renewable space. In addition to the big 5 gigawatt that Nurlan was indicating just now, there is the auction method, through the auction method, a number of projects that came through as well. And this was done through attracting and creating a state-of-the-art legislation that was put in place, which now renewable energy represents about 6% of the energy produced in Kazakhstan, with a much more impressive goals of up to 15% soon. And this was 0 10 years ago. These achievements underscore how targeted policy reform combined with strategic investment can unlock private sectors coming in and investing in the country, and that accelerates the transition to a greener and more connected future. We see opportunities to build on lessons learned from the opening up of the pools of capital, more PPP projects, targeted infrastructure gaps in the energy, urban transport, healthcare, education, and other sectors as well. Crucially, embedding also the ESG, environmental, social, and governance from the outset, the projects benefit stronger shareholder and stakeholder management, better access to concessional financing, green finance, and smoother implementation as well. Kazakhstan's success in renewable energy auctions and the larger projects, and its leadership in sustainable finance across Central Asia, shows that ESG isn't a constraint, but it is actually a competitive advantage. So let me now talk a little bit about where we see the opportunities. Energy transition. Obviously, Kazakhstan remains amongst the most energy-intensive economies in the world, with energy intensity more than twice as the EU average. And this gap continues to represent enormous opportunity for renewable energy developers, commercial lenders, institutional investors alike also. Deploying large-scale solar and wind farms paired with battery storage and modern transmission and distribution networks, and piloting the green hydrogen hubs are the big opportunities on the energy side. And regional integration is another one. Realizing the economic potential of the 5 countries in the region, home to 88 million people, hinges on deeper integration and smart specialization to avoiding excess manufacturing capacities and capitalizing on the sizes of the collective market. So no single Trans-Caspian route will suffice. Therefore, need to have alternatives. And Trans-Caspian Transit Corridor, or the Middle Corridor, or Trans-Caspian International Transit Route, which was both mentioned before me as well, is important. And the EBRD plans to invest a minimum of 2 billion euros in the regional and transit infrastructure, which includes the Trans-Caspian route, over the next few years. And we're targeting to mobilize multiples of that from the commercial lenders and other commercial investors, private investors as well. We look forward to also collaborating very closely with AIFC to attract more funding in the form of green and sustainable bonds as well. So let me conclude with this. Viewed from a global perspective, Central Asia is currently enjoying one of the best periods in the recent history. If you need evidence, look no further than the caliber of participants at the Astana Finance Days. Central Asia is relevant for the world, not only for the oil and gas, but also for its human potential, human capital potential, and for its ability to connect, innovate, and create value. Thank you very much.
Wow, great. Thank you, Hossein. Thank you for your institution, for being here for so many years and investing into the economy of Kazakhstan. I have in the beginning said about the difficulty of attracting capital in infrastructure projects given the long-term nature and long payback period for this project. So we have to be as a country creative in attracting different capital with different appetite for risk into these projects. And you have already heard from Samruk Kazyna, so our own fund, that our public capital that we're ready to put into these infrastructure projects. We heard from the representative of MDBs how international financial institutions like EBRD, like Asia Development Bank, like AIB, like and many Eurasian Development Bank and other institutions contribute to the investment. But I think that we are yet this region missing one type of capital that we as AIFC would like to facilitate coming into the region is a private equity that is focused on infrastructure. So it's my pleasure to introduce Jad Elan, the managing partner and head of Middle East for Brookfield Asset Management, one of the largest private equity asset managers focused on infrastructure globally. Jad, I would congratulate you with your debut on scene of Astana and Astana Finance Days. Would like to hear from your view as a global asset manager on infrastructure projects, and of course, if you can a little bit elaborate what brings you to Kazakhstan and to this region, that would be really interesting for the audience. Thanks.
Absolutely, and look, thank you for having me here, and congratulations to yourself and to His Excellency the Deputy Prime Minister on everything that you're achieving both here within the AIFC, but also within the country. So my name is Jad Elan. I look after Brookfield in a number of regions, the biggest one being the Middle East for us. And for those of you who might not be familiar with Brookfield, we're a $1 trillion alternative asset manager, and alternatives being real estate, infrastructure, renewable and energy transition, private equity, and credit. And across the spectrum, we always evaluate regions at the cusp of when we think is the right time to start investing. And a very big example of that is the Middle East, where we started our business just 7 years ago, but today have invested over $15 billion, making us the largest foreign investor in the GCC today with a number of partners. Now, I've heard a number of times, throughout my stay here, and this is only one of a few times that I've been here. We started coming quite a while ago, and some of my colleagues have been coming for years. There's this perceived notion of difficulty of attracting capital, and so I thought maybe I could demystify that a little bit for everyone, as at least how Brookfield looks at investments in new geographies. And so the first thing I would say is there are 3 main criteria that we look for when we look at entering a new country or geography. And just to put this into perspective, we have over 35 offices globally already. And as you can imagine, for someone of our scale, all of those offices have investment professionals. We do not have an office which just focuses on capital raising. And so the 3 criteria that we very much focus on is number 1, rule of law, number 2, respect for capital, and number 3, the ability to scale. Those are probably the 3 most general parameters that we start off by looking at. And what I would say is as we've visited Central Asia more and more, and particularly Kazakhstan, we're seeing all of those 3 tick the boxes. Now, when we say rule of law, we add to it respect for capital, because sometimes rule of law doesn't mean necessarily how strong is the legal framework. Sometimes you can be in places where the legal framework might be a little bit vague, but at the same time you're in partnership with people or with governments where you feel that there is a respect for capital, meaning that you have an ability to solve very big problems with your partners outside of the legal framework. And if I were to tell you, quite frankly, at least as I run my business, we have yet to really go, I would say, head-to-head with anyone in a legal court. Having said that, the fact that the AIFC is now, or from the beginning, instituted a jurisdiction which is more familiar to those with common law is a very strong start to attracting foreign investment. And then as I think about respect for capital, I think it goes without saying, Samruk Kazyna is probably one of the best examples of this in the country, in the region, but also in the world, in terms of how the standards to which they are running their institution. And that reflects very, very well upon the country. And also we've seen that in our various dialogues with members of the administration here, where you feel that the country is open to receiving and really willing, as we just heard, to be partners with investors such as ourselves. And so that gives us a degree of comfort which I don't think many places in the world can provide. And then third, as I think of the ability to scale, I think it goes without saying, I mean, this is one of the largest countries globally geographically, which has a border with one of the largest populations globally. I think it goes without saying that this country is primed for an ability to scale. Now, those are three criteria in general that we look to institute. Now, what it all comes down to, at the end of the day, is the return that an investor can make investing somewhere on a risk-adjusted basis. And it will be no surprise to many of you that that will differ depending on where you are investing, the risks that are associated, but also, as I was discussing with Hussein just previous to this, the perceived risk of investing in certain areas. And what I would say from the beginning is, if you look at an investor such as Brookfield, and we are, I would say, very different to a lot of our colleagues in the private equity space, the reason being that of the $1 trillion that we manage, half of that is actually our own. It's Brookfield Corporation capital, which means that we're our own largest investor. But the other $500 billion is coming from investors around the world. And the first thing you'll see managers globally say is, we effectively act as agents for that capital. And so one of the ways to demystify this a lot of the times in growing economies, I don't tend to use emerging markets as a terminology, I like to call them growing economies or growth economies, is just to find that pocket of capital that is looking for that exposure. And Brookfield's funds invest on a global basis, but we started to recognize the ability to generate outsized returns in growth markets. And so in one of our largest global funds, which is our Brookfield Global Transition Fund, which is the largest of its kind, focused on renewables and on the energy transition story. Our first series was $15 billion. The second series today that is being raised is $22 billion. But what we did was we're in the process of raising another $7 billion, which is called the Catalytic Transition Fund. Now, the Catalytic Transition Fund is exactly what it is meant to do, which is that there is certain investors in that fund who act at a capped return as a catalyst for the rest of the investors. So 1 billion out of that 7 billion actually caps out at a 6% return and shares all the rest of the upside with the rest of the investors. When you start to provide investors that type of off-the-bat additional return, that can be very helpful for growth economies. And so we expect that that fund will be very active in not just Kazakhstan, Central Asia, but then also a lot of the other economies, which maybe today investors in the more, I would say, developed market fund are looking for. So I'll leave it at that.
Thanks, Judd. I think that was a very interesting overview and quite an innovative approach, I think, was the last fund you mentioned with the capped return. And that's not what you really expect from a private equity fund, right? But fascinating, and I hope that your geography of your fund will include the Central Asia and, of course, Kazakhstan. Now I would like to pass the floor to Mr. Gilauri, Nicholas Gilauri. He is the former Prime Minister and Minister of Energy of Georgia, so had a hand-on experience on developing policy for infrastructure, but also executing it. Today he is a reformist advising more than 20 governments on the issues of attracting capital and growing economy. So Mr. Gilauri would be happy to hear from your experience, if you can share it, and your view on what reforms are needed for the countries, developing countries or growth countries, as Jad mentioned, to facilitate capital. Please.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure and honor to be here, and thank you very much to the management of AIFC for giving me this opportunity. Actually, this forum is becoming one of the main forums, annual forums regionally, and congratulations with this. About infrastructure and about region, I would like to first stop at the regional view. If you look at Trans-Caspian corridor, which was actually mentioned by Mr. Bozumbayev, which is developing very fastly, and we are seeing quite interesting kind of developments in this region in terms of Trans-Caspian development and middle corridor. If you look at the region itself of the Trans-Caspian, Central Asia and Caucasus, it's not a small part of the world. If you look at it as a united economic region, it's 7th in the world by territory. Of course, Kazakhstan being #1 by far, which is on its own in 9th in the world. By population, it's 100 million people. By agricultural land, it's 4th in the world. By critical minerals, it's amongst the top 5 in the world. By energy, oil and gas, it's also amongst the top 10 in the world, top 7 in the world. So it is a quite interesting, amazing investment opportunity for you. And not only for you, but also for other investors around the world. How do you maximize the value of this wealth? So it's a super wealthy region. How do you maximize the value of the wealth? You maximize the value of the wealth by diversifying investor base. As many investors you have, as many potential money flow you have, as many potential new technologies you can attract, that's how you diversify the value of this wealth. If you depend only on one corridor, if you depend only on one investor, if you depend only on one direction, that's where the value maximization doesn't happen. So that's why I believe that developing all logistical directions towards east, north, south, as well as to the west, is only beneficial for the region. It's a maximum benefit that these countries can take from its wealth only through diversification. I want to focus a little bit on the middle corridor because as an ex-Prime Minister of Georgia, I was very much involved in the negotiations of the middle corridor. It has much bigger potential than it's doing now. Its growth is amazing, really. It's doubling, but it has a much bigger potential to play a key role. Why? Because right now, it has a split amongst different countries, different companies, Trans-Caspian, Kazakh Railway, ports, and so on and so on. What is the way forward? I believe the way forward is to have one tariff and the initial split of the tariffs amongst all key players of the corridor. This is, and one operator. If the corridor has a one operator, then the corridor becomes attractive, then the corridor becomes competitive. This is when we will be able to see much more companies from the West, from Europe and United States and others investing in the region and bringing new technologies. Second, also very important advice that I would like to have given to myself when I was Prime Minister back then is to create some kind of common infrastructure fund for the region, because there are very specific infrastructure projects that are very specific for the region, for the Trans-Caspian, and countries themselves co-investing with institutions like EBRD and private sector should be beneficial for the middle corridor. So kind of creating middle corridor infrastructure fund dedicated to this corridor only. This includes rolling stock, which is such a shortage in our corridor. This includes port rehabilitations on the Caspian or new shipments across the Caspian. So there are many projects which can be developed very successfully that can open up the middle corridor going forward. But for that, I believe that dedicated infrastructure fund where all participant countries are participating, all regional countries are participating, plus where we have additional financing come from private sector as well as international finance institutions can be super beneficial for the corridor going forward. Now, another topic that I would like to focus on is what should be the way for the country to attract private investment in infrastructure, which is the most difficult. Infrastructure is a long-term, difficult project. Countries invest in them, governments invest in them, international financial institutions invest in them. Based on our experience as a company, as Reformatics, we have been advising actually way more than 20 countries. One of the best ways to attract private capital in infrastructure is PPP, which I don't like this anymore, by the way. It's kind of outdated term, and in many developing countries, it's been misused for different reasons. So like, let's call it strategic partnership model, okay? Strategic partnership model, which I believe we did it actually in Georgia a couple of times, and I believe this can be the best way to go forward. So what we did, especially for large energy projects, is that government creates a company, and government makes sure that this company gets all the licenses, permits, land, connections that it needs to build new infrastructure. It invests only for the first few months. It creates value out of zero, and then goes to private sector to attract private capital. And saying that government is ready to sell minimum 51% of the project, but it will be on a tender base. Whoever will invest more will get the project based on everything. And in the end, government has also an option, alternative, that the private sector will buy the government out after 5 years once all the risks of the construction is gone. And with this formula of buying out, the government has extra money to invest in new projects. So I call it kind of revolving infrastructure fund for the government, where government starts from zero, new infrastructure projects. Government develops these projects for the first 6-9 months. This is the period which are most hated by private sector. This is the period which are, for private sector, is the most difficult. Get all the licenses, get all the permits, get land, get all the bureaucracy. And this is the easiest for government. So the idea is to split where government is much more easy for government to do, let government do it. Whatever is much better and more efficient for private sector to do, and it's construction. Let private sector to do that. So by diversifying and by splitting the job into two, we have the formula where I believe, and it was done in many countries already, I believe that this can be one of the best formulas going forward to attract private capital into strategic projects, strategic infrastructure projects in our region, in any developing countries actually. And finally, just my final remark is about infrastructure fund in general. The biggest and best potential investors for infrastructure funds, infrastructure projects are pension funds. This is a logical kind of connection. Pension funds have a long money, infrastructure has a long payout with a relatively low risks, and this is where I believe developing countries should be looking at. how do we create system where we bring long and relatively cheap money, pension funds money from Western countries to the region. This is something that I would like to kind of brainstorm with my colleagues going forward, and that would be one of the biggest achievements, because we are talking about $60 trillion of pension funds which haven't been utilized for this, by this region yet. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Gilawur. I think Jad can share or discuss with you the attraction of pension funds into infrastructure projects. As far as I know, the largest group of investors into Brookfield funds are the Canadian pension funds, right? So you can maybe talk about the appetite for risk of those Canadian pension funds, how they see the investment infrastructure, and if you can a little bit elaborate on the idea of creating a dedicated cross-country fund for middle corridor. I think that should be also managed by professional asset managers. So do you think if that fund, for example, is created, how much capital you would be able to attract outside of this country's participants of Middle East? Middle corridor.
So you're asking me for a crystal ball here, but the first thing I would say is the idea of shifting risk parameters between government and investors is 100% correct. There's no question about it. Investors have fear of the unknown. And everything that you've laid out, sir, is absolutely what investors would at first look at and say, I don't know that I can do that in this specific country. And I think that goes back to rule of law, respect for capital, and everything that we were talking about earlier. The thing about pension funds, and I say this as well knowing that Brookfield itself has its own insurance businesses that invest into our own funds. So not just do Canadian pension funds invest with us, we invest with ourselves using our insurance capital. The treatment of that capital and the amount of risk it takes and the determination of what that risk is very important for regulatory reasons, where those pensions are regulated. So pension funds, as you can imagine, cannot be investing all the time in venture capital. They just can't. Because number one, it would be irresponsible for everyone's pension to be thrown into high risk, high return type transactions. But also, the regulators within their country would not allow them to do that. So the best way to actually do that is to only give them yield, and almost a yield which has been highly de-risked. You can only do that, like my colleague just said, by taking out all of that initial risk. Now, your point about having a manager administrate that is very important as well, and I'll tell you why. We're in the process of raising a private equity fund dedicated for the Middle East at Brookfield. It's off the back of everything that we've done. And actually LPs, global investors, came to us and said, well, you know what, you've invested $15 billion in this region. Seems like you know what you're doing. You have a decent track record. We've been wanting to enter. How can we enter? Can we do it with you? So the actual product, if you want to think of it that way, which was the private equity fund for the Middle East, came from global demand of people wanting to invest there, right? Now, when I say global demand, the reality is it's mainly investors in the Middle East and in Asia. And if you ask me, if you wanted to do something of the sort, where would you find the best capital to follow that? I would go back to saying it's the Middle East and Asia. And it's because those two regions are the most familiar with Central Asia. They're the ones that have a natural link historically and currently. Now, let's put this into perspective. The Middle East and Asia are two of the largest capital providers globally to begin with, outside of the Western pension market that you were alluding to before. The sovereign wealth alone in our countries is pretty significant. So as to the size and the scale, I can't answer that, but what I would say is I can imagine it would be exceptionally successful.
Thanks. I think that was a very good remark about where the capital now comes from Middle East and Asia. And I think Mr. Zhakupov can share his view, given that he's executing a number of projects with the investors from the Gulf region and from just recently arrived from China, and maybe you share the appetite for risk and interest in Central Asia of these investors, and whether it's better model for them to be like a co-investor with you, kind of partially operational investor, or the fund structure that I'm not saying they're mutually exclusive, I'm just saying like what is your perception of this appetite from these regions, who they want to partner with?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much. First of all, I would agree with the previous speaker from Brookfield, and I would say yes. These are for us, Middle East and Asia. The mentality is very well understood. I think we share the same values. We think in the same way. On one hand, on the other hand, the risk appetite for Kazakhstan and for Samruk Kazyna project is quite tolerable, and I think they are our natural partners from capital perspective and from partnership perspective. Regarding, it's in their culture and it's in their DNA, in my opinion, they like to partner with quasi-sovereign, I mean state-owned companies. They like state-owned companies to be a part of their JV holding a minority stake. And this modus operandi has been proven successful. As mentioned earlier in my speech, we have a number of JVs which successfully operate here in Kazakhstan together with our Chinese, Asian and Middle Eastern partners. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Zhakupov. Any final remarks from the participants of the panel on the topic? If not, I believe this concludes our plenary session. I think it was an interesting discussion on attracting investment into infrastructure in emerging or growth markets, so-called. We have a next panel session here in 10 minutes, but now I would like to really thank our distinguished panel for their time, for their thoughts, and for sharing that with us. Thank you.